I just want to say a couple of words for those of you who may not know this about where I would like to position the move towards more lay preaching, where it comes in the theory of homiletics that has developed over the years. And this is as much of a lecture as you're going to get from me. It's for about 2 minutes. Because we usually, when we talk in the homiletics business about where the field of homiletics is right now, mostly we don't go back any further than about 1970. Because basically following World War II, certainly with an impetus added during Vietnam and that whole period, the 60s and then the early 70s, there was a major shift in the way authority was understood in the area of preaching. And some of you have heard this a million times, so just bear with me. The book that is usually cited as the breakthrough book is this one, As One Without Authority by Fred Craddock. And I'll leave it here if you want to look at it later. This is a revised version of it. It's gone through 4 editions. This revision finally went through and made it less sexist and that sort of thing than it was when it came out in 1971. He was still at that time really writing to male preachers, pretty much. 1971 now is a kind of a long time ago, but the movement that Fred Craddock named, I won't say that he initiated it, but he named, was a move toward inductive preaching, and later on people would say it was a turn toward the listener. You don't need to memorize inductive. It's had actually a number of different definitions given to it, but the important thing I think is to say it's been a turn toward the listener. Well, what does that mean? It means that instead of the preacher getting up in the pulpit and basically saying, this is the truth, listen to me and buy it, instead the preacher is now starting out with where the people in that congregation are, and imagining, as the preacher works and as the preacher actually preaches, imagining the fact that the sermon that is heard is the sermon. The sermon that you've prepared over, sweating over your computer or however you prepare. That's not the sermon. The sermon that's heard is the sermon. And that's a major shift in the way people conceived of what preaching was. And I would say that at least in the Protestant churches, this is pretty much what it is. Most of you, I'm just looking around here, you're not very old. You're not older than the 1971 cutoff place, really. The preaching you've heard for most of your life, if you've been in the church, has been at least influenced by this movement that I'm talking about. This is what everybody in the Protestant traditions, at least the mainline Protestant traditions, is teaching in the seminaries. And those of you who've been my students got taught this way. We think of it as the norm now, but it wasn't for a long time. And as you can imagine, I think without too much difficulty, the norm before that was much more like a lecture, much more like an essay. Say what you're going to say, then say it, then say what you said, which is probably what at least many of us were taught to do in high school when we were writing a 3-page essay on a piece of literature or something. That is no longer the norm in the way we teach homiletics.